Hey guys, so today we're going to start looking at incorporating some textures into our work a little bit differently and also altering these handmade textures that we've brought in a little bit, converting one of them to a bitmap and then converting the other one to a halftone pattern, and how to save these out so that you can use them in your design files. So essentially we're going to be working in a project where we create 2 to 3 objects related to a passion or a hobby of yours, and then you're going to work through these steps of creating your own unique textures, manipulating them and bringing them into your work, as well as adjusting the typography and using textures within that as well. So the first thing we want to do is look at some of these textures and how we can manipulate these a little bit further. So I have a couple of textures already saved out here. You guys will be creating something similar to these on your own. And the first one I'm going to do here is I'm just going to open this up into Photoshop. And we've kind of looked at something similar to this in the past. The first steps that we need to do here is to unlock this layer here and then go in and adjust the levels if need be. My levels are pretty good here, but I'm going to go ahead and use my white color dropper to select my whites, which it's very white here. I'm actually going to bring down my darks a little bit here though. And so now we see a little bit of this texture, this raw texture that we've brought in here. And we could basically start working with this as is if we'd like to. Or we can also use a bitmap to save this out to a much smaller size so that we can work with this within our file. And it gives it a little bit of a different look to that as well. So in order to do that, the first thing that we want to do is come up here to Image, Mode, and go to Bitmap. And it's going to ask you if you want to flatten the layers. We're going to go ahead and say OK. And it opens up this additional dialog box here. Now for the output, we can go ahead and leave it at 150, the default for now. And it also has different methods of playing with these bitmaps. And you can certainly go through here and explore these if you'd like to. But for this particular one, we're going to go ahead and look at diffusion dither. And we're going to hit OK. And you'll notice that it went ahead and made some change for us that doesn't look very obvious right off the bat. But as you zoom in, you'll realize that it actually is breaking everything down into just individual pixels of just black and white. It loses all the grayscales that are in there. So what this does is it creates a really nice working file for us to be able to save this out as a bitmap, it's a much smaller size, and bring it into our work from there. So once we've gone ahead and adjusted this as a bitmap, we're just going to go up to File, Save As, and we're going to make sure that we're saving this as a format of a bitmap here. So I'm going to go ahead and save this into the particular folder that I have, and I'm just going to name this number 3, if I can get down there. And I'm going to go ahead and save this guy out. It's going to give you a couple other options. We're working in OS here, not Windows, and depth 1 bit is the only option because it is a bitmap there. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. And now if we go to our Finder, we should be able to find that bitmap that we've just created there. And we can see that the file size is fairly small, which is really nice when we get into something where we're working with a lot of different textures and manipulating those. So that's the first step. We've already created several of our own textures, and now we've created this one as a bitmap texture. So another one that we want to look at is how to maybe explore a halftone pattern with another texture that we've created. So for this particular one, I'm going to use a different texture that I have here. And I'm going to go ahead and open this one up in Photoshop as well. And again, I'm going to go ahead and unlock the layer first. And again, first thing I'm going to do is come up to my adjustments, my levels. I'm going to choose my white dropper and come into here and choose an area where it's essentially white and go ahead and click into there. And don't forget, you can also hold your Option key down to see where those whites and those darks are happening, right? So that's looking pretty good to me. I think I'll bump the darks down a little bit and maybe even bump the whites up a little bit more just to get a little bit more contrast within this image. So once you're happy with that, you can go ahead and click OK. And the next thing that we're going to do here is we're actually going to turn this into a halftone pattern now. Now there are several ways to do this, but one way that I found that's fairly easy is by coming up here to Filter and Pixelate and Color Halftone. And what this does is it enables you to actually create a full color halftone pattern if you'd like here. Something like you would see in a magazine or even a newspaper for that matter, where it's using different colors to create the image. But we actually want this just to be black and white. So in order for that to happen, we want to make sure that all of our channels here are the consistent number. It doesn't really matter too much what your number is, but for this particular case, we're going to go ahead and just use 100. And I'm going to use a radius of 8, which is basically the radius of the circles that we're dealing with. So let's go ahead and click OK. And you'll notice right off the bat, it creates this really awesome halftone pattern with a lot of variation, basically feeding off that original texture that we have here, but again, creating this really, really nice background halftone pattern for us to use. So this is awesome. This is what we're looking for. But we're going to go one step further here, and we are going to erase the white background similar to how we did in the previous texture so that we can start playing with the color here on this one as well. So if we go up to select color range, it brings up this additional box here. And we can actually just click in the image, whatever color we're trying to select. In this case, it's the white. And if you need to adjust this, you can. It kind of picks up different areas. We can bring that in a little bit if we'd like. You can see how much it selects and deselects. And we're going to go ahead and click OK. And now that we have that selected, we're going to go in and hit erase. And you'll see now that we have no background to this. It's a transparent background, but we still have that really awesome halftone texture that we've created ourselves. So in order to use this in our design and keep that as a transparent file to adjust the colors, we need to save this out as a TIFF now. So if we come up here to Save As, and the file format, we select TIFF down here. Let's see, where is it? There it is. I'll go ahead and save this out as 3 as well. And it gives us a couple other options here as well. Biggest things to think about here is you don't want to do any image compression at this point. Just leave the pixel order as interleaved. I would select Macintosh if it's not selected already, and we're going to leave the RLE down here as well. And the most important thing here is to make sure that your Save Transparency box is toggled on, because that's what's going to create that transparent file. So we want to make sure that that's checked. Now once that's checked, we can go ahead and click OK. It's going to say that it's going to increase the size. That's fine. And again, now we've created these 2 different files. We have our bitmap file here, and we have our transparent TIFF file that we've also created. So you'll notice that the transparent TIFF is a little bit larger than that bitmap, which is, it's going to be okay for this particular practice, but you can see if you started to add in a lot of different textures, how a file could get kind of large there. So now we have a couple different textures to work with. You could explore more if you'd like, but for this particular assignment, we only need to have 2 different textures, one as a bitmap and one as a halftone pattern that's saved out as a transparent file. And the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to open up the sketch that you've created to start creating the simple shapes to apply these textures within Photoshop.